I'm gonna keep hanging out here.
I know, right? But we're done today. This is it. You missed the week. Yeah. Oh, hi. Welcome back, everyone. We are closing the week out strong. We have Ronald Sullivan with us from Clark Hill. He is so many things. He is amazing. Most of all, educator, attorney, advocate, and SME, and so many things. So I'm excited to have him here today in San Antonio. Trying to get him to move back to San Antonio, but he is very active in the community here, supporting small business and just providing great legal advice and insights. So I'm excited to have him share his insights with us today, and I'm going to hand it over to him.
Thanks, Melanie. Well, thanks. It's my pleasure to be here. My name is Ron Sullivan. Again, I'm from Clark Hill PLC. That's a law firm, international firm, 27 offices in the U.S. plus Dublin and Mexico City. I will, this is what we're talking about, non-compete clauses and non-solicitation clauses. And I'll just talk a little bit about myself. So 29 years for the federal government, 10 on active duty, 2 for the Department of Justice doing intel law. I did 12 years at the Department of Veterans Affairs for supply services, IT type contracts. And then for the last 6 years, I was the chief of acquisition law, personnel ethics, artificial intelligence, data privacy, and emerging technologies for Army Futures Command. And that's the entire 25,000 person enterprise. The joy of my entire career is because I'm a techie, because I started with a computer when I was 12 years old, I get to actually work alongside tech spaces in the acquisition world. So while I want to be an advocate and a criminal prosecutor and criminal defense counsel, my career kept dragging me back to acquisition law. So I'm also a brigadier general in the Army Reserve. This is 29 years, and next year is the year I have to hang up the jacket, I believe. So we're going to keep having fun at here. So I've been with Clark Hill for 5 months now, just about. My practice is the full spectrum of acquisition law. So from, I think I want to put together a company that does federal government contracting, I do that. I have a company, I'm thinking about this type of contract or this type of solicitation, and I don't know if I want to do research and development, traditional contracts, SIBRs, OTs. I have this partner who has this idea and we think we can do it. Well, let's talk about it. I can do the full spectrum of those things. And here at Clark Hill, at the end, you'll see a slide of our capabilities, and you can see we truly do full spectrum from facility clearance, deal with organizational conflicts of interest, CFIUS issues, and then so many other issues. So small business, 8A, ACDB, DBE, even though that group is dealing with the new Department of Transportation rule, and so much more. So I'm going to just try to get into it. And you see two titles there for me. I'm a lawyer, senior counsel. I'm also a senior director in our Clark Hill Public Strategies group. And you would say, what's that? Well, you might not need me for legal advice, or you might need our firm for something that's not legal advice. We can assist in lobbying. We can also assist in discussing governmental affairs, things that are not legal. So we don't have an attorney-client relationship, but we do have a relationship where you can retain us for some assistance. All right, let's get into it. What are we talking about today? Here's the goals, the agenda. Want to talk about the two clauses, non-compete clauses versus non-solicitation clauses. We're going to distinguish them. We're going to talk about enforceability. I have some bad news and some good news about it. And then we're going to talk about how this applies to federal government contractors, because I'm going to talk about this in a general business way, but also because I work in the government contract space, I'm going to try to make this applicable to government contractors as well. All right. So here's the thing. Ask your questions. If you're online and you can get to the online space to ask a question, someone will ask your question out loud here in the room. If you're here in the room, go ahead and raise your hand, ask the question. I'd rather get through it. Before I start, if you have a burning question, go ahead and ask it now. And if I'm going to get to it, I'll say, yeah, we've got that. If not, then I'll know where to fold that answer in as I keep going. So any questions from the audience? 4, 3, 2. All right, nothing heard. Oops. What is a non-compete agreement? All right, a non-compete agreement is a hammer, pretty much. Now, if you're a business owner, the one thing that you want is you want to start your business, you want to get with your co-founders. As you're getting your ideas together, you've talked about so many different things, you brought some folks on, or you're in full stride, year 2, 3, 4, 20, and you have these dynamite employees, right? And then the employee is going to leave you to start their own thing. You've inspired them, but you hate the fact that you inspired them so much to be just like you, and they want to open a business just like yours. But when they started, you had them sign a non-compete agreement because you were thinking, oh, if this person ever leaves me, I don't want them competing over me. Well, good idea. We've used them for years. And as we've used them for years, we find that what has happened is it starts stifling competition. It starts making people either not work for you as hard while they're working for you, or they don't take all the risk, or they don't give you all the ideas that are in their head because you don't want them to compete with you with something that they've lent to your company. But just think about it. It's a contractual provision that prohibits the person from working for a competitor or open a business just like yours. Well, truly, since the beginning of time, that's a good idea. But over time, we've got to think about what's the limit on that. You don't want to make sure someone can't take care of themselves or start their own thing, and this is their own livelihood. Geographic scope. You can't open a business in this area, in this state. Well, the state might be too big for what you do. You just throw newspapers in your city. You don't need to prohibit someone from throwing newspapers in the state. You might prohibit them from throwing them in a 150-mile radius. Gives them a little bit of rigor, little difficulty. Okay, so they can go to up to Dallas and throw newspapers, compete with you, have their own wonderful company, and then watch what happens. They open it up, the same newspaper routes in every city 150 miles outside because they've perfected your methods. Well, they might not be able to open the same type of business for a period of time. Well, that's good too. Period of time, 18 months, 2 years. 2 years is about the maximum time. But sometimes what you don't want is the person to leave your company today and open a company next Thursday and do the exact same thing, put up a nice, pretty sign, and everyone in town knows that this person used to work for you and starts bringing their business to you, especially if they're 10 years younger, 20 years younger, a little bit more nimble, a little less grumpy, and then their business starts running circles around yours. Also, industry and business scope. Some non-competes say you can't open your business for the federal government. Well, if you're a federal government contractor and that's what you've been doing, that type of non-compete could have detrimental effects on that person's work because that type of work may only be done for the federal government. And we're going to talk a little bit more about classified jobs. Certain non-competes can really get in trouble in that area. Then we have consideration. No matter what, the employee must get something for the non-compete. So in most contracts, you offer something and you get something. So the consideration in many cases is the job. Here's a job. As long as you sign the non-compete, you get to work here. Well, they received a job. Sometimes you have an employee working for you. You send them to a special training or something like that. And once you send them to this special training, you've spent $10,000 of your money to get a special hazmat or a special secret squirrel certification of some type? Well, you gave him this special training. Or what if you give him a bonus? I'll give you a bonus if you sign the non-compete. And the bonus and the non-compete work together. That's the consideration. All right. Legal foundation. Remember, and what we're going to talk about here in a few minutes is a federal law that's affecting non-competes. But every state has its own non-compete rules, right? So regardless of what the federal rule says, even if the federal issue goes away, even if it goes away tomorrow, if all the challenges to this issue go away, states still have rights and states still have laws that you must still compete with, right? So don't think that just because you have a non-compete and it's enforceable or it's not enforceable because of some federal law, that your work in the state that you're operating in or where the employee is operating is not affected, all right? Non-solicitation agreements. Oh, there's a question.
Should there be certain roles or jobs that you get a non-compete on, like is there a parameter around this is a good idea versus absolutely not needed or in between?
Good. So the question was, are there certain roles that are better to have non-competes than others? And the answer is depends. All right. So there's my lawyer answer for the day. It depends. So it depends because just think about what you're doing. You and another person open a venture. They know everything you know. Well, if you open it together, you're not going to have non-compete signed, right? So now you bring on your first COO. The COO now is being taught all the special sauce. You may put a non-compete. And we're going to talk, you'll see that there'll be a salary cap as far as the new federal law is concerned with respect to what the person's role was in the company and what they did. So a C-suite person might be able to get a non-compete, and then you still put those parameters on it: geographic, duration, this industry and business. So if you're in the toilet bowl sales business and this person is wanting to open a bathroom tiling business, not the same industry, not the same business, but they have some great ideas for how to do something in home improvement. Well, that's easy, different scope. And then someone's going to challenge, well, it's in the bathroom industry. It's the same thing that I do. Well, you guys can spend your time and your money working on that. But yes, you want to be thinking about those businesses that the folks that you bring on could do that compete directly with what you do, and limit the scope so it's enforceable. And then by the time we end, we'll give some other tips about what to do with the non-compete. Yes, ma'am.
When you talk about state law trumpeting federal law, how does it work when, for example, you have a company that is operated and located, say, in California, but registered in Delaware?
I will get to that in a few minutes, and I love the question. And we're going to make sure that we never say that state law trumps federal. What we're going to say is they work in contrast or in contravention of each other. But sometimes they both are dead on. You have to consider what both of them are saying, okay? Non-solicitation agreements. Now, I said the first one was a hammer, right? You can't compete, boom. Well, non-solicitation agreements are pretty surgical. We've brought you here, and you can't solicit our employees to come work for you once you leave here. You can't solicit our customers to come start soliciting your business, right? And that seems to be really better than competing. Hey, you can open up your thing all day. We sell donuts, you sell donuts, go ahead and do that. But you can't take our mailing list, you can't use our advertising philosophy, you can't use our social media customers and tools. You can't use all the algorithms that you've learned from us. All those things that you've gotten from us, you can't use. And now, because Tony's the best donut fry guy in the state, you can't call him over for poker night. You can't call him over for Monday Night Football and keep trying to talk them into coming to join you, even for more money, because you're violating your non-solicitation agreement. What's more difficult is you're a nice person. These are your friends. You see these folks at socials, you see these folks around town, these are the folks in your ecosystem, and then they just leave our company and join your company. Well, that's going to be a litigation issue later, or that's going to be a mediation issue later. That's going to be something that happens later, because it'll be hard to prove whether you solicited the person or not. But there are ways to get into emails. There's email servers, there's email CCs. You never really know where your message is going when you send it, text messages and other things. And then, of course, once our entire team has joined the other company, we have a pretty good idea that there was some solicitation going on, not just that everyone just decided to leave our company. So non-solicitation agreements are what we really want, and we're dealing with customers, employees, and vendors. Now this person can go over and set their entire new business up. Maybe they use all vendors who are out of the state. They have a new relationship with some folks in Oklahoma, so they get all their supplies, they get all their deliveries, they use all their support services, and everything's virtual to their company. Well, have at it. Let's see if that works. That's a lot better for the company that starts with the agreement from the beginning, from the original company. The number one issue is diverting business. Non-solicitation agreement helps do that. And it makes a way that we can look at, once business starts being diverted, you could test and measure if what the former employee is doing or did has something to do with diverting the business. They may have better donuts. If they have better donuts, hey, we've got to figure out how to compete with that. Key distinction in the two: it's a more limited scope, non-solicitation versus non-compete. And you'll see as we keep going how they're different. Let's talk about some legal framework issues. So there's this department, the Federal Trade Commission's 16 CFR 910. So last year, rule comes out. They issue this rule and says non-competes are now illegal. And that's because there's so many places across the federal government and so many places across general business where someone, when they have a non-compete, their livelihood is completely tanked. All right, so let's have someone with a top secret security clearance. And you say, you may not compete. You have a non-compete, you may not go work for another black ops cybersecurity company. Let's say now CMMC 2.0 is out and you're the lead engineer for that. You cannot go work for a competitor in this space. Well, this individual's entire livelihood is tied to doing that work. They've been doing it for 15 years. They did a great job for you. The reason why your company is number one on the list of CMMC companies is because of this engineer. He's trained up your entire staff. Now he's thinking, hey, I'm going to take my show on the road and open my own company. Well, he doesn't remember that 12 years ago he signed a non-compete clause, or she signed a non-compete clause, that they can't open up their own business. And they've only done it in the classified world. So you're dealing with classified level engineering work. Now you stifle the ability of this person to do anything except work for you. The cynical response is, they can do anything else. They can go milk cows. They can drive trucks. They can go become a pilot. We didn't prevent them from doing that. Well, you prevented them from doing what their skill is. And the surgical nature, if you go back to the non-compete clause, we put parameters on it, it's still not surgical. Non-solicitation, maybe so. You can do CMMC, you just can't take those guys that you trained up for the last 12 years. Now, we don't care if you solicit people from other companies You just can't take our team. Yes, ma'am.
So maybe not in the CMMC case because that's not really proprietary information, right? But if you have proprietary information firms, and should they go in the route of the NDA instead of non-compete in that case?
Yes. Hopefully everyone has various non-disclosure agreements with their employees, especially the ones who see the proprietary information. So of course, companies have patents for various things and certain things are copywritten. That's a certain protection. But then you have the trade secret, the basic company business trade secrets. The only way we protect those is to do non-disclosure agreements. And then we have this non-solicitation agreement. So the NDA and the NSA, you put those together and now you can go in and know all of our secret stuff all day, but you can't do anything to it. And once you do something at your company that seems to indicate it is what is rooted in our proprietary information, you have a cause of action at that point. And then we start various mediations, negotiations, cease and desist, and then also litigation. So those things are definitely important. Yes, ma'am.
2 questions. Do non-competes have statute of limitations, or are they forever? And the second question is, do non-competes affect your family members?
So key issues of non-competes: geographic scope, can't do it in this city or in this town or in this area; time duration. So we want to make sure that they're not going to be enforceable if they're forever, right? And we'll talk about reasonableness in a few minutes. Yes, ma'am.
Oh, that answers the question.
Okay. All right. So we have the Federal Trade Commission rule, and this is in litigation right now. It's still in litigation. So what FTC wants to do is say, hey, you can't make folks not compete with you, period. It's stifling capitalism. It's stifling growth. It's stifling people's ability to compete in the marketplace. If your stuff is that good, you just keep at it and let them compete. Put durations on things. There's certain levels of protection that we want to give you, but they have to be reasonable. The executive exemption is something that's important. Over this number, 152,000, and a policymaker. So if you pay the janitor 152,000 to say, hey, he can't compete, that's not it. Person has to be a highly paid person, a C-suite person, or director of something important in your space, and make policy that affects your company. Not just the CFO who's managing the books and the money, but if that person is also contributing in their CFO role to the secret sauce of your company, but think that person's brain is different than the COO's brain. The COO makes it happen, right? The CEO makes it happen. The CTO makes it happen. The CFO, maybe not so much in a policy way, unless there's something about your financial approach, your financial DNA that drives your company's business to be as successful as it is. All right. This was a huge impact back in April of 24. It went into effect later in the year, and there's several cases, including a Texas case that has enjoined the rule to take full effect. But just because the rule is not in full effect at this point does not mean that you don't need to adhere to it. Federal government contractors. Think about the code of business ethics. There's a business ethics rule that basically says you can't do things to your employees to keep them from locked into your company. There's still a level of fairness that you as a business have to consider with all of your employees. Also, violate some of these rules, treat your employees inappropriately, and you could end up with a suspension or debarment from your agency, which is as bad as having a termination for default. And then sometimes it creates organizational conflicts of interest. In your company, just think this. Person works for you. They created specifications and they created special advice to the government while employed for you. Now, they can't work on that company's contract or that agency's contract because they participating in drafting the specifications. So they already have a limit now of things that they can do and can't do. Now you make them non-compete. So now there's certain companies they can't go work at. So they can't work for you and they can't work at certain companies. So basically, all they can do is something outside of their expertise. So maybe it's better not to give them a non-compete. It's better to give them a non-solicitation, because they're now not going to take any of the information that you have. They can't work on the contract that they wrote the specifications for, but they can do something different, right? There's an issue, I talked about a few minutes ago. There's an issue about this FTC rule, if it takes effect, if it takes full effect, that it works differently with the state law. So there's a preemption there. Non-solicitation agreements are appreciated over the non-compete rule, and that's almost written into the way that the FTC rule is crafted. Non-compete agreements by state, all right? Big patchwork chart. The different colors, no color, no restrictions. Banned with limited, the dark colors they're banned, can't use non-competes other than certain situations. And then the others have either salary requirements or other restrictions. Why is this important? This is important because depending on where your company is located, a different rule might apply. So Texas has a reasonableness standard rule. That's here. You can have a non-compete. That's the state law. But think about this. The non-compete has to be ancillary to something else. So the person has to be an employee, and they have a non-compete for a reason. Reasonable limitations, geographic, time, specific industry, and it doesn't impose a more than necessary restriction. Right? All right. Restatement of what I just said. Let me go backwards. This is the patchwork chart. This is your company. Your company is in Texas, California, Virginia, and Illinois. You have folks in all of those places. Your headquarters in Texas. My advice is, do you use the most restrictive state? Right? If you use the most liberal state across the entire company, people are going to have different rules. And then you're going to be violating one of the state statutes. If you use the most restrictive, if you say, okay, enforceable if reasonable, not enforceable. Well, you might want to start using a not enforceable standard across your company and go, okay, let's use non-solicitation clauses and NDAs, and let's make them work in concert across the company. But if you're only in Texas, go for it. Have your non-compete agreements. Just make sure they have reasonable parameters. Questions about that? Yes, ma'am.
As your firm grows, so you start small, right? And you may not be doing work in California. You may just be doing work in Texas, Virginia, Illinois, and you assume that you would assume Texas law.
Yes.
Now you're expanding in California or one of these other states that does not enforce. Would you then reassess your policies?
Yes.
And then redraft, go from go to a non-solicitation? Would
Yes.
you want to go through that process?
I love it. You could probably do this with me, Melanie. So the idea is your team, as you grow, you absolutely have to have the different experts that grow, right? So once you have a Texas 12 employees and you grow and you add some folks in Oklahoma, your HR director needs to have an HR handbook, right? And your CFO is going to be pulling taxes out a little differently for Oklahoma. So as you make all these different policies, this is one of those types of rules. And one thing I'll say is, of course, here's the lawyer plug. Don't try to solve all legal issues yourself. You'll be going alone and unafraid, and then you'll be like, wait, I thought that Sullivan said Texas was a reasonable rule state. And, wait, there's some enforceable restrictions, someone told me. The HR specialist should be able to understand the various human resource rules, but the lawyer should be able to say, okay, here are some things that are important. I saw your employment contract and your NDA is good, but your non-compete clause is not enforceable in this state. And there's enough CEOs and founders who'll say, that's fine, it's not enforceable, I get it, we'll deal with that in litigation later, and we're signing them. All my folks are signing them, it's great. And what's gonna happen is we'll look up in about 6 years when we have our first kerfuffle, and we'll be telling the CEO, remember what you said back when we gave you this advice 6 years ago, and that was your superstar employee that you're trying to keep now in block. You should have just gone with a more reasonable rule, or let's switch over to non-solicitation and NDA to protect our secrets. But yeah, it's that kind of thing.
I have another question. So as we're expanding, should you, so instead of just going for that contract in California, should you maybe assess if all the requirements in California are aligned to, or you know, what is the risk, I guess? Do I look from a legal perspective or just go for it? Would a company just go for it, or would you say, wait, let's look at California's laws first,
Okay.
or whatever other state?
I think it's founder and company exec specific. All right, show of hands real quick. All right, raise your hand if you already run at about $1 million revenue a year, and you're working in an accelerator and someone comes and says, hey, we have a company that's going out of business, needs to be acquired, something's happening, they're leaving the country, and they're trying to sell their business. It has a revenue of $57 million a year, and it's in California. You guys want to take that over? Right? Who's in for taking over a $57 million revenue company? Right? They've got some different rules out there. And then what we're going to do is just go ahead and hire, hopefully their HR person does that, right? And we have several people who say, I'm not going to California. Those guys they're going to fall off the face of the earth. They're not Texas. But I think it really depends. And it's all dependent on doing your due diligence when you make the acquisition. Those are the types of rules, questions that you're going to ask, not just looking at the books, not just looking at, hey, it's 57 million in revenue, but what's the expenses, right? And that's everyone's first question. Well, they're paying out 56.5. Well, 56.5 or 50, you know, we have folks who won't take that all day. And we have other folks who will take that because they want to increase their bottom line. They're going to get rid of about $3 million worth of fat, and we're going to be profitable, really profitable. So the terms of each state law are always something that I'm going to advise that during the due diligence phase you would do. But also when you expand, and in the federal government world, you know how easy that is. You have 5 locations and sites, and the government then calls you and says, hey, we want to add 6 more sites in 3 more states. And you have not even thought about Florida, Virginia, and Maine. You don't even know where Maine is, right? So it's a very common question. All righty. Reasonableness standards. Let's deal with this 3-part test of the reasonableness standard. Is it a legitimate business interest that we're trying to protect? Yes, this is my chief baker. I don't want the chief baker opening another business tomorrow across the street. 1, he's taking the best baking talent from my company, but 2, everyone's going to go to him next week. So I need to put some boundaries on that. Yes. This person is the mail delivery clerk. Probably not a significant business interest to give them a non-compete clause. And several of the states have a salary requirement. If the employee doesn't make over a certain amount of money, non-compete's not enforceable, period. Next, they want the test to determine if the non-compete is unduly burdensome on the employee. Well, sometimes, and we're talking about geographics, it might be unduly burdensome to put a parameter that says you can't compete within 150 miles. Because the type of business or the type of work the person is doing, let's say it's only 1 military base in your state. and this person does work in support of the Navy in Corpus Christi, and that's what they do. Well, you basically have just now said, if you're going to work again in this industry, you have to leave the state. Next, is it reasonable in scope and duration? Those are the things we talked about on the second slide. Now, what the courts will do, the courts will take their blue pen and start lining through terms and conditions and changing what you said. Within 150 miles, we'll change that to 60 miles, right? So 150 miles says you can't work in Austin, Texas from San Antonio. 60 miles says, okay, you can't work in New Braunfels, but you can work in Austin, right? So we gave them a different parameter and scope and distance. They might just take the entire contract, take out clauses, and give you a whole new contract. And lastly, they might just strike complete parts of your non-compete clause altogether. So the rule is just be reasonable up front, and the court doesn't have to do it later, right? And if you're in the right court, you might have just torn up your entire non-compete clause and spent $10,000 fighting over this non-compete clause for no reason. All right, we're getting close to the end now. Government contractor specific issues. Folks with security clearances, let's be careful putting non-compete clauses for those employees. It's a headache you just don't want to have. This statute here, this regulation here that deals and governs with folks with top secret and other clearances, it already tells them what they can and cannot do. And when you have this clearance and then you're unable to compete anywhere else, you basically just told them they can't work. Cleared employees have limited mobility, and then you can also work with the facility security officer to coordinate the different people. So you can put parameters, but understand that the facility security officer is going to need to understand why you're putting this parameter on this cleared employee. New, 2, people get paid different amounts of money. And I said it for the states. In the Service Contract Act, it already limits certain people's or manages certain employees' salaries. So be careful about that. Wage determinations as well. OCI, we talked about it a little bit. Depending on where you are and what you do for one contractor, if you also have a non-compete, you could even be further squashed. And sometimes you just can have a functional non-compete as opposed to an employment non-compete. You can work for another contractor, but you can't do X or Y job. And that just keeps them from being poached from you. All right, here's the 2 clauses side by side. Non-competes are broad, non-solicitations are surgical. All the way down, this is really a summary of everything I've talked about today. Yes, ma'am.
I believe you touched on this earlier. So for both non-compete and non-solicitation agreements, is that only for employees, or does that apply to freelancers as well? Oh, sorry. Is that only for employees, or does that apply to freelancers as well?
You could put this on your 1099 employees as well. You could. To contract with you. This is a contract with you. It's primarily for employees, but understand as you bring on a 1099 employee, they're an independent contractor, but it's a contract. They're agreeing to do certain things in exchange for working with you.
And that's for both non-compete and non-solicitation?
Yes.
Okay.
So just think about that. You have a 1099 employee who's now friendly with everyone in your entire company, and they decide to close the doors, open up across the street, and solicit all your employees. You probably want that type of protection. All right, enforcement strategies. Couple things. Melanie asked a question a little while ago. What can we do when we move from one state to another and do something else? Better stated is you should understand what you're doing with your information and with your employees at all times. You're enforcing in talking about your non-solicitation agreements, your non-compete agreements annually. You're talking about it at various, I'm going to send you this training if you do X or Y. You may want the CTO to talk to all of your cybersecurity personnel about their non-competes or their non-solicitation agreements. So it's not something that just happens because you're mad because the employee left you, right? So this isn't about breaking up. This is about protecting your company's information. So if it's truly about protecting your business interests, it's something that should be in your annual review. It's something that should be in your quarterly review. It's something, oh, I'm going to send you to this training, or we're going to give you this bonus if you do X or Y, but we also want you to sign up for this non-compete because you now know the secret sauce to the company, and we don't want to lose this capability, all right? So that's what this is about. This isn't just simply because the person's leaving. It's because there's usually some business interest, and you must show that you have an interest in it too throughout their employment with you, not just when they're leaving. Yes, ma'am.
Quick question on when to implement. So let's assume I started a company in the mailroom, and all of a sudden you promote me to being your CTO.
Yes.
Can you institute a non-compete or non-solicitation at any level within employment, or does it have to be at the start?
You can do it at any level, and it is just an additional contract. So just remember, the non-solicitation or non-compete is a contract, and the consideration was the promotion, or the consideration is the new salary. The consideration is you get to work for us. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, kind of going off of that thought. So what happens if, say you do start in the mailroom and you don't want that promotion because you don't like the either the non-solicit or non-compete,
Yes.
and then you end up being on like your job saying, hey, we don't need you here anymore.
Well, Texas is an at-will state, and you do understand that you don't have to work here.
But I'm saying they let you go because you didn't sign it. Does it still count, or is that gray area?
Okay, so most leaders who have a good relationship with me are not going to ever say, and because you didn't sign the non-compete agreement, or because you didn't do this, we're letting you go. You're either going to follow the labor and employment standard, which is follow the at-will employment terms. And my advice to everyone is, just because someone won't take an additional encumbrance or caveat to their employment shouldn't be why you terminate them. I want you to be my new CTO and sign this. No, I don't want to sign that. Well, we're going to let you go. That probably shouldn't happen that way. 6 weeks later, we're going to let you go. Still kind of suspicious. But if the person was doing a great job in the mailroom, we should let them keep doing that and let's find a new CTO. But the number one thing to think about is, just because you don't want to take on a person doesn't want to take additional encumbrance to their employment doesn't usually give rise to, yeah, we just want to terminate you now. And it's easy grounds to pay out money that you don't want to pay out, founder. Yes, ma'am.
I've actually recently had a number of contracts come to me, and they wanted me to sign a non-compete or a non-solicitation as a freelancer, and I said no to both.
Mm-hmm.
It worked out to where they were, more than happy to allow me to continue to work, but I'm wondering if that is out of the ordinary, or if most companies would actually push back and say, no, in order to work for us, you do need to sign one or the other, or limit the scope.
Well, I would say it this way. It's a business decision. And if I'm showing you the recipe to Famous Amos cookies, I need some way to protect that trade secret. But if you're really that good at what you do, I don't really care. You're not going to get to see Famous Amos cookies, and I'll hire the next person in the door who will sign it, because I'm trying to protect that. If I'm trying to keep my employees from being stolen because I believe that you might come in and build your own company or learn our business and then compete with us directly, I have to figure out as a founder and as a company what I'm going to do to protect it. So I think it's all company specific. And I think sometimes it's all about relationships. Just remember, all of these things that we're talking about are because I don't know you from anyone else off the street, right? And then after we start working together, you know, I leave my kids with you and let you babysit them, you know, whatever. I'll see you tomorrow. But that's a relationship. So time is what the relationship is. So these agreements are to make up for we don't have time between us. All right. Parting thoughts. All right. How do your current agreements align with these rules? You should think about that. I have agreements. Do they align with the FTC rule? Do they even align with my state rule? Do I have a legitimate business interest in the non-compete, or do I just do it to everyone just because they're here, right? The IT guy who's just working help desk, do we care, really? Generally, no. Unless he's going to take your whole help desk with him because he's, you know, a great poker night guy, right? Can we use a non-solicitation agreement? Will that get us where we're trying to go? And lastly, are we creating mobility challenges for people who work for us by the agreements that we have? Those are the things you should think about. Oops. Well, don't know what happened to that. No, don't know what happened to that one. All right, so those are my information's in the bottom right-hand corner if you need me. I work for Clark Hill Law. I'm based in Austin, but I think San Antonio is in my suburb, and this is my home city, so I'm happy to be here as many times as I need to be. I am here to answer your questions now if you have more, or I'll be here for a few more minutes. It's been my pleasure to share with you.
I appreciate you coming here today for your time and sharing your expertise. A small
Thank you very
token of
much.
appreciation.
Thank you. Over here.
1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3.
And then Brianna.
You're really tall, you know?
No, I don't know.